22nd of July and a Wednesday. Now this goes back to the 20th, a couple days ago, when Andrew Scheer brought something up, a point of order, point of privilege.
I am now prepared to rule on the question of privilege raised on July 20th, 2020 by the Leader of the Opposition concerning remarks made by the Prime Minister in Committee of the Whole regarding an investigation headed by the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner. Members must recognize and accept the existence of differences of fact and interpretation, which have always been a part of the normal cut and thrust of debate and question period." End quote. I cannot therefore conclude that the first criterion was met. If one cannot conclude definitely that a statement was misleading, it would be difficult to conclude that the member making that statement knew it to be misleading and, as a result, that the member intended to mislead the House in making it. Excuse me. Therefore, based on my assessment of these three criteria, the threshold for finding a prima facie question of privilege has not been met.
Well, disappointing to say the least, though not unexpected, as Anthony Rutta is a Liberal. It would be hard for him to rule against his boss in this, though it's obvious. He lied. He knew that the confidence wave. Watch this now.
Begin. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So what we have before us with the WE corruption scandal is an organization that receives sole source contracts from the government, from the taxpayer. They then set up a real estate company and gobble up over $40 million worth of prime downtown Toronto real estate. They also pay members of the Prime Minister's immediate family cash for speaking engagements. And they also provide a huge platform for Liberals to do their campaigning. They even did an election-style ad promoting the Prime Minister himself. But they get into trouble, Mr. Speaker. Red flags start going up about their bank covenant. Members of the board resign. And so they lobby the government, and the government gives them another sole source contract that they are able to take $40 million worth of administration fees from. Canadians rightly are concerned by this kind of you scratch my back, I scratch your back type of relationship with a Liberal-friendly organization. So I have a series of very simple yes or no questions to help Canadians understand the depths of this scandal. Was the Prime Minister aware that the agreement that he signed with this organization was not with the WE charity itself, but was with a shell corporation that has no assets and no history of charitable work?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as was made clear at committee, the nonpartisan public service recommended this approach as the only way to deliver this program in the timeline required this summer during COVID. Last week, I acknowledged that I should have recused myself, and I apologized. But our goal was and is to provide opportunities for students to serve in their communities right across the country in this unprecedented time. Obviously, the way it unfolded was regrettable, and the program is no longer unfolding as we'd said. In regards to aspects of the We Charity Foundation, the public service worked to find the best possible delivery of this program to get student grants for volunteer hours. The public service worked with the WE organization to develop the agreement, and the work was done and negotiated at the officials level in those details. We have consistently approached as a way of empowering young people across the country, the way other governments of all stripes have worked with this organization in the past.
The Leader of the Opposition.
That didn't answer the question, Mr. Speaker. Was the Prime Minister aware that this agreement was being signed with a shell corporation with no history of charitable work? Yes or no?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The details of the agreement was worked out at the officials level.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Minister has to understand it's not about him recusing himself from this decision. The Clerk of the Privy Council himself said that it would be impossible for the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister to recuse themselves from giving a sole source contract to an organization with such close ties to the Liberal Party and his immediate family. Was the Prime Minister aware that the Shell Corporation that signed the contracts' sole stated purpose was to hold real estate?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As I said, Mr. Speaker, governments of all stripes, including Stephen Harper's government, work closely with this organization to deliver opportunities for young people. When it came to negotiating the specific contract with this organization, the civil service worked out the details of that.
I'm just going to pause and stop the clock for a second. I understand that it's very emotional and it gets very tense in here sometimes, but coaching somebody with answers probably isn't the right way to have these sessions. I just want to point that out to those who are shouting across from one side or the other. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Did the Prime Minister or anyone in his office receive the unsolicited proposal that Craig Kielburger sent to officials on April 9th? Yes or no?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
No, Mr. Speaker, we move forward on creating a program that would get young people to serve right across the country. The civil service made recommendations around which organization we could partner with.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Did the Prime Minister or anyone in his office receive the proposal that included the student grant program that was sent to the Finance Minister's office on April 21st, a day before the announcement was made? Yes or no?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, throughout my career and throughout the life of this government, we've been focused on giving opportunities to young people in a range of ways, and we've continued to look to do that during this COVID crisis.
Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, he answered no to the previous question, but he couldn't answer yes or no to that question. So I wonder what that means, Mr. Speaker. Did the Prime Minister or anyone in his office speak to anyone at prior to his April 22nd announcement on the student grant?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, giving opportunities to young people through service and volunteer work across the country was important to this government, has been important to this government for an awfully long time. We will continue to look to create opportunities.
Well, the Finance Committee is going on right now too, and we'll show you clips of that shortly. And it looks like it's going to be yet another hard-hitting one. And this is just, like we said, action-packed day. Stay frosty. Well, I'll tell you, I am actually in shock at what this Canadaland thing, company, never really heard of them before. He said about him being investigated by unsubstantiated thus far, but apparently he says this is all online. So all you people, I recommend you Google search all of this, what this guy says. And of course, there obviously is going to be more to follow. This is scary, creepy, what he alleges.
Jesse Brown is a publisher with Canadaland. Before I get to you, Mr. Brown, I'll give the MPs the question list. First round of questions will be Mr. Cooper, Ms. Koutrakis, Mr. Fortin, and Mr. Angus. Floor is yours, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the invitation to appear before this committee. By way of context, I'm a journalist and publisher of Canadaland, which is a small independent news organization and podcast network that is funded directly by Canadians who support our reporting and want to make it available to everyone. I'm here today in that spirit. I want to stress that as a journalist with no political affiliation, I take no position on the outcome of these proceedings. 5 years ago, Canadaland News became aware of issues concerning the WE organization and began reporting on them, eventually publishing a series of in-depth stories by reporter Jaron Kerr and a number of more recent articles. WE is active in over 7,000 Canadian schools. They have received millions of dollars in public funding over the years. The WE organization engages directly with hundreds of thousands of Canadian children. For those reasons, Canadaland felt that the public had a clear interest to know more about the WE organization. I want to use my time here to share with you a summary of facts that Canadaland verified and reported through our years of investigation, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about our reporting. Canadaland has reported on the misuse of charitable funds by We Charity, fraud and embezzlement within We Charity as alleged by We Charity itself, a culture of systemic racism that the We organization has acknowledged and apologized for, a history of suppressing criticism from within and suppressing journalistic scrutiny from without through intimidation and legal threats that our news company experienced firsthand. And Canadaland has reported on We's labor issues in terms of youth and youth volunteers. And I'm going to describe those in some detail because they might be relevant to matters before this committee. Canadaland collected accounts from over 24 former and current We employees and obtained supporting documentation which confirmed that the We organization has a troubled history in terms of its treatment of young volunteers and workers, many of whom first encountered We through their primary and secondary schools when they were children and teenagers. According to the We organization itself, employees joined for minimum wage and worked around the clock. Former employees told us that overtime was for many years unpaid. So with all hours counted, employees worked for less than the minimum wage. The excessive hours became a safety risk and health concern in several instances. Former employees described to Canadaland a high-pressure environment where loyalty and commitment to the Live We philosophy were paramount, and where criticism or failure to meet fundraising targets resulted in being frozen out socially, being shamed, and eventually being fired. 14 former employees likened We to a cult. A former director-level employee told us that, quote, it is incredibly toxic and inappropriate the way that they treat young people. A former associate director who left in 2014 said, quote, the culture of bullying and fear is very pervasive, and that comes directly from the founders. 12 former employees said that they had been verbally abused, yelled at, or bullied by Mark or Craig Kilberger directly. One former We manager, Dan Mossop-Balquill, said that he was, quote, made to feel guilty about doing expense reports because he was told, quote, that money would otherwise go to educate starving students in Africa. Others told us similar things, saying that they were told by superiors that if We provided the resources these employees requested, it would mean less clean water, fewer vaccinations, and less education for impoverished children in Africa. Other young employees expressed ethical concerns about what they were asked to do for We, particularly with regards to aggressive fundraising campaigns in schoolrooms. One widely expressed concern from our sources was that they had signed up to do charity work for We Charity, but ended up selling products, doing labor, and generating revenue for a private for-profit company. Me to We, the company controlled by Mark and Craig Kilberger, was described to Canadaland by a former employee as, quote, first and foremost about money, despite its noble beginnings. While the We organization insists publicly that the two entities are completely separate and distinct, internal We organization documents obtained by Canadaland reveal that We's, quote, mission is to, quote, create a single brand experience with one overarching brand. The We organization's claim that 90% of the profits earned by Me to We are then returned to We Charity was not something that Canadaland was able to independently verify. What is known is that money flows in the opposite direction, from We Charity to the Kilbergers' private company. The amounts are significant, $11 million over the last 10 years. The amount of money transferred out of the charity and into the private company increased sharply in the last 2 years, period of time in which We Charity was in breach of its bank covenants, as revealed by We's own audited financial statements. A little bit more to say as our reporting progressed, the revelations about We became more serious. Canadaland obtained a recording of Mark Kilberger in conversation with a senior employee who talked openly about bribing government officials in Kenya. This employee made violent threats towards another We employee.
Jesse, just to you are out of time, but we'll give you a little more. But what I'm interrupting about is, can you move your mic probably a little further from your lips? The interpreters are having a problem. You're coming through with a little fuzz.
Okay.
So if you could wrap up in a minute and a half, that'd be helpful.
That's about what I've got left. When We was questioned about this recording, We's lawyer told Canadaland that the employee had been stealing charitable funds from We and that Mr. Kielburger made the phone call at the request of Kenyan police. When asked by Canadaland to provide documentation supporting this claim, Mr. Kielburger did not. There was another instance of misused charity funds when the We organization publicly insisted that they had never paid members of the Trudeau family for speaking at We Day. Canadaland discovered this was simply not true. Not only had they paid Margaret and Sasha Trudeau over $300,000, but $64,000 of the payments to Margaret Trudeau came directly from We Charity. Canadaland also revealed that a daughter of Finance Minister Bill Morneau spoke without pay at a We Day event and received an endorsement for her book from Mark Kielburger, and that later another daughter of Minister Morneau went to work for We Day in the same month that Minister Morneau announced $3 million in government funding for We. In summary, in conclusion rather, the information that Canadaland reported and which I just shared did not come easily. The employees who spoke with us did so despite contracts that We had asked them to sign, which prohibited them from criticizing We for the rest of their lives and which claimed to hold their heirs liable if they ever do so. When Canadaland sent the We organization 11 early questions, they sent us 33 questions back. Why were we asking? What would we be publishing, and so on. They later asked us who our sources were. They told us that they wouldn't answer our questions unless we answer theirs, which we refused. Our reporting persisted. As we continued to investigate, their lawyers hired a private investigation firm to investigate us. Specifically, they investigated the personal life of our reporter, Jaron Kerr, and my own personal life. The information this firm investigated included, for some reason, the name of my then 8-year-old son, and speculation about which school my children attended. My colleagues and I endured these pressures in order to put all of what I just said onto the public record, so that anyone considering engaging with the We organization, be they a youth volunteer, a school, a donor, a possible partner, could make informed decisions about how to proceed. In fact, most of the information I just shared has been available on the open internet for over a year to anyone who cared to run a Google search on the We organization.
Well, are your palms sweaty? Mine are sweaty. Like, that just, it seems like an awful. We don't know any of this, but if this is true or not, but if any of this is true, leave your comments.